Hello there, and here I am standing in a portal about to talk to you about something that has bothered me for a very long time. I'm going to talk to you about cancer. That's right, cancer. We're going to go very deeply into this subject in this film, and I'm going to do it through this walk. And the place I choose to do this is really appropriate because straight ahead of me there's the town, there's urban life, there's busyness, there's toxicity, there's a lot of habituation to pharmaceutical drugs and alcohol in the population where I live. And then behind me, wild nature. So I'm going to take you on this walk and we're going to explore this subject in a lot of depth. So what I'm about to talk about is very distressing for many people, because we've reached a point in the world's evolution where just about everybody knows someone who's been touched by this disease. So what I'm going to do in this film is first of all explain to you what cancer is, look at some of the causes, and look at what I would call the sane ways to treat it. And I'm also going to talk to you about my qualifications. In other words, what gives me the right to make a film about this subject at all. And I think that's very important, so I'm going to start off with that. So the first thing I want you to know is that I have worked in medical pathology and I have a degree in microbiology. So the whole medical area is something I'm very familiar with. Then the next thing that happened to me is I married a woman who had cancer, and she had cancer for 25 years before she succumbed to the illness. So I guess that's my second qualification to speak on this subject, because of that extraordinary experience I had with her personally in all that time. And then my third qualification is that of a shamanic practitioner, and I've learned huge amounts in my shamanic training and working with clients ever since. And my fourth qualification is working with plant medicines. So these are the areas of expertise which I've got, which I'm willing to share with you on this subject. I'm just taking a little rest while the rain comes down on this August day north of England. So let's have a look at cancer itself and what causes it and what it is. So what I want you to understand is that our bodies are made of billions of cells, hundreds of billions of cells. In other words, a number so huge we can't even begin to imagine it. I call such numbers the mathematical numbers. So this is it. Your body's made up of a huge number of cells, and these cells are arranged into tissues and organs, and you have the bones and the muscles and the blood and the nerves and the brain and all the rest of this. And all of these cells work together in what I would call harmony and intelligent cooperation. And this is what enables a human being to wake up in the morning, put your clothes on and go and have your day, because your cells are working together cooperatively. Now, in the situation where there is cancer prevalence in the body, what happened is that some of the cells have gone into what I would call open rebellion mode, and they regress to a more primitive state, and in this more primitive state they have a very different shape and structure, and it literally is the breakdown of the body. So this is why the illness is so serious and so severe, because by the time the person's got cancer, they're literally in a situation where parts of their body are no longer choosing to cooperate with the rest. They've broken away from the whole, and what they're doing is they're just proliferating. So these cells, which are cancer cells, they're larger, they're more primitive, and they don't have the capacity to work intelligently with the other cells in the body. And they are in open rebellion, and they proliferate. They just multiply and multiply, which is why when a person gets a cancerous growth, what usually happens is increases in size. So this is from the scientific point of view what's going on. And so when it comes to treatments, and I'm going to look briefly at the conventional treatments, but only briefly, what the job is to look at the body and to identify the particular part of the body where there's something wrong, to exclude everything else from the investigation, and to simply attack that part of the body with the intention to kill off those cancer cells. It's a very primitive, barbaric and superficial way of looking at the illness, and yet this is what the flower of our Western medical scientific community has been focusing on for more than 50 years. And as someone who worked in medicine, and someone with a degree in microbiology, I very much explored and inhabited that realm. And then I met my wife, the woman who became my wife, and she had cancer when I met her. And that propelled me on this incredible 25-year journey with her. And I learned so much through her experiences and through her sufferings. And she had many, many cancerous growths in those 25 years. And some of them were treated using alternative methods with very great success. And so we're going to be looking at the alternative methods, and what I'll do is I'll distill our experience of 25 years into what are the most important things to be aware of. But meanwhile, let's just go back to the situation of some parts of the body being in rebellion. For something like this to happen indicates that the person must be in a very severe state of imbalance. And this is one of the things that really helped me when I started to study shamanism. So that my wife died from cancer, which she had for 25 years. I got a phone call from a very dear friend who invited me. There's a shamanic practitioner's training starting next month. Are you up for it? Without any thought whatsoever, I said yes. Now, some months into that training, I became aware that I was being given the clues and the keys and the understanding of why she had the illness, and also what to do about it. So this will really start to go deeper. So what I want you to understand is when someone has an illness like cancer, what's been going on is there's been a very severe imbalance, and I'm talking about on a spiritual, mental, emotional level, before any physical symptoms become present. There's something in that person's existence which is deeply troubling to them. This may be to do with traumas which they experienced in their early life, or maybe even not in their early life. It could be as an adult. The other thing it can relate to other lifetimes and the impact of very severe experiences in those times too. However, what has really made the huge difference, what's turned cancer from a part of the possible human experience to getting on towards the majority, because these days either you've had cancer, or you know someone who has that illness, or you'll meet someone who has that illness. That's kind of the way it's gone these days. So what has made it such a incredibly significant illness in the time we're living in is to do with what's actually going on in the world as a whole. So what's going on in the world as a whole, as we all know, is that the world has gone mad. The connection between a human being and a nature is breaking down to such an extent that a lot of people don't ever do what I'm doing now. They don't have time. And if they did have time, it wouldn't occur to them. Or they might live so far away from wild nature, it's not actually practically possible for them to do this. Well, when you go back into history, there's no such thing. People always have the opportunity, the ability to connect with nature. So I argue that one of the fundamental causes of this awful disease which causes so much suffering is our disconnection from nature itself. This is a really significant part of it. And then when we go further into it, we see that the way that the society has gone is to come up with quick fixes for problems. So We have a pharmaceutical industry which is dedicated to finding quick fixes to relieve symptomatic distress without addressing the root causes. Now, when I started to study shamanism, I realised that that's what we were doing. We were going to look at the root causes. And it's a really exciting part of the shamanic practices to work with clients, to find out what is troubling them, to go deep into the origin of their dis-ease, and to release what needs to be released, and to bring back what has been lost. So I understand that as I am speaking this out, I'm flitting back and forth, and it's the only way I can do it, because it's a very personally distressing subject to me, as my wife died from the illness in 2005. So I'm one of the majority that's been touched by this. So I want to talk to you about a dentist, and he's called Dr. Weston Price. And what he did is, in 1929, he went around the world and he studied the teeth. And you're going to think, what has it got to do with cancer? You just wait. He studied the teeth of people who lived in indigenous societies away from the mainstream, what they would have called in those days primitive peoples. And he studied their teeth and their overall state of health and what they were eating. He went back 10 years later to exactly the same places and did the same studies, and this is what he discovered. These people had never been exposed to all our modern ways the first time he went to visit, but that 10-year gap was enough to make all the traditional Western things, all the modern Western things, to become available. So all the fizzy carbonated drinks, all the refined foods, the refined sugar, the pharmaceutical drugs, all those things entered into those particular societies in that 10-year gap. And when he went back 10 years later, he discovered an outbreak and a proliferation of degenerative disease that literally horrified him. And this is perhaps the most obvious and outstanding proof that as a human species, the reason why we suffer from so much degenerative disease today is because the choices that we've made in terms of agriculture, by growing things with pesticides and using inhumane methods of farming animals, all these things we're paying a heavy price for. So there's different levels that I'm speaking here. So on the very personal level, there's the personal experience of the individual person, which could indeed predispose them to be having a serious illness. And then there's the general conditions of the society in which we all live. So we've got these two strands which are going on. So I've already made a film about sugar, so what I want to say to you is as follows. A person who's suffering from the illness cancer is almost certainly going to be having a sugar habit, a habit of consuming refined sugar in some form or forms. So it's a really important thing, if you have that particular illness, to actually cut out the conventional refined sugar. If you see my film on sugar, I'll make it really clear to you how sugar is a necessity for us. We need sugar in our diet. We need sugar to be able to live. But what we don't need, and we're so much better off without, is the refined sugar. So this is a simple distillation from that film. Every human being's got a digestive system. We were designed to take in complex carbohydrates in the forms of starches and whole plants, and to break them down and digest them into sugars. This is a natural process, and this is the way our body is designed. If we subvert that entire process by eating sweets, sticky carbonated drinks and all the rest of it, the sugar goes straight into the body. It sets up an addiction dependency syndrome, and because the body's getting it too easy, it throws everything out of whack. Everything goes out of balance, out of kilter. So this is the number one thing for people who have the illness cancer. They need to actually let go of the habituation to sugar, and they need to make sure that they don't eat the complex carbs. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, if you want to learn more about that, go to the film on sugar. But let's go into cancer, and I'll start to look at a situation of someone who's got a problem. So I like to keep things real for you. So last night I had a visit, and it ended up being someone talking about their mother's diagnosis. Today I ended up with a message on Facebook, someone talking about a friend's diagnosis. So this is so common. And as the friend who came round last night said, when he was in a large cancer hospital, the first thing he noticed was it was heaving, it was packed, there were so many people there. So it brought home to him what a serious situation it is. And unfortunately, when I listened to all the information he was given by those in authority, it left me feeling the way I often feel in this sense. Now, people who see me making these films, sometimes the comment I might get is, well, don't I ever show any dark side? Well, here I am, you see, because it fills me with a sense of righteous indignation and anger that the situation is that people who so need the help are actually struggling to get it because of the way the mainstream is offering them things which are toxic and not giving them any information about the simple steps you could take. So, if someone was to approach me with this question, okay, I know someone who's got cancer, what can they do? Then what I would do is I would say, first of all, you need to think about what the person is putting into their body. What are they eating? What are they consuming? And I would suggest the following. What I want you to do is I want you to do everything possible to help that person to alkalize their blood. If your blood is acid, that's giving rise to disease. If your blood is alkaline, that is moving in towards health once more. And a really simple thing to do is 1 heaped teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, also called sodium bicarbonate, dissolved in some warm water. Have one of those in a glass with warm water, half a glass full, say. Have that every day. Now that's instantly going to start to alkalize your system. And that's what I call an immediate thing you can do. It's going to improve things. The next thing I would want to suggest is that you take up a diet which is going to favour an alkaline system. And it's going to be all the old favourites that we all know about, really, which is green vegetables, fruits, fresh, juiced, cooked, whatever way you like them. The important point is to switch whatever you're eating to a diet which is plant-based. We call it a plant-based alkaline diet because if you're basically making juices, salads, cooked, whatever form the person can take the vegetables and the fruits in, then what they're doing is they're turning their blood from disease-based to health-based. And that will start to turn the situation around. And what some people sometimes say to me, but surely in such and such a case it's too late, isn't it? Well, I say it's never too late to make a difference. And I'm going to qualify that as we go on. So there's a whole lot of things that you can do in terms of diet to improve your health, your life expectancy and your vitality. And this is a really big one to start with the fruits and the vegetables. Now the qualification is if the person's got cancer, these need to be organically grown. If they're grown with chemicals and pesticides, this is not going to do it, people. It's not going to get there. The other thing I'm going to suggest is selenium. Go to a health food shop and don't buy the tablets, but get a liquid form of selenium. This is a mineral which was present in all soils and it protected people against cancer. But over the last 60 or 80 years, where more and more chemical methods of agriculture have been introduced worldwide, there's a worldwide depletion of selenium in the soils. Now there's one place in the United Kingdom which is known for people to have a long life expectancy and low cancer rates. It's North Norfolk and it's near the town called Sheringham. And the thing about that is the soil there is rich in selenium. So this is a really important second step to take. So you're alkalizing the blood and you're taking in the selenium. This is going to make a huge difference. Now these are what I call really straightforward, simple things that anyone can do. However, let's take it further. I want to talk about plant medicines next. And the plant medicine I want to talk about is the one that Rick Simpson exemplified in his series of films which are called Run From the Cure. So this great man made films about how to take a preparation of a particular plant and give it to the person, and then it cures heart disease, cancer, and a whole bunch of other degenerative diseases. If you want to go really deep down the rabbit hole of this particular thing, what you can do is you can investigate online something called the Sacred Plant. Thesacredplant.com. A group of people have made a succession of films about this whole subject, going into massive detail, and I would recommend that if you want to know more, that's what I would do. And in the first film, they spend the first half hour, they don't tell you what the plant is. Bit irritating, I thought, because I'm a person who likes to get to the point, so I'll get to the point. Yeah, Rick Simpson, Run From the Cure, his films, and then the Sacred Plant, they're talking about the cannabis plant. So here's one of the ultimate ironies. A plant which has been maligned, vilified, persecuted, attacked since 1937, when the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act came out in the United States of America. Yeah, that plant, which has, generally speaking, a poor reputation, and most people's opinions of it are coloured by hearsay, innuendo and gossip. Well, that plant just happens to be the number one plant for curing the illness we're talking about here today. That's right. So we literally come out of the dark into the light. If you're interested in exploring the subject further, apart from the Sacred Plant and Rick Simpson, let me just cue you in, basically. This plant has been known of since biblical times and long before as being a healing plant. It can be taken in many different forms. Currently, a popular form it can be taken in is called the CBD oil. And if you go to the website, you'll find out there are links about how to obtain that. So this plant has the ability to do what the drug industry has been unable to do. What the drug industry does is they have various different treatments. I'm particularly thinking about the chemotherapy. Now, chemotherapy, when I studied this, when I was studying my microbiology for my degree, I was told that chemotherapeutic agents are cytotoxic drugs. And someone put up there and says, what is cytotoxic? And the answer from the lecturer is, come on, wake up, you know your Latin, your Greek. Right, cyto means cell, toxic means kills. So that's right, so in the actual definition of chemotherapy, what we know is it kills cells. Well, your body's made of billions of cells, so we're proposing that you take something that kills cells. Doesn't sound very clever at first glance, does it? No, it doesn't. Well, the principle behind the chemotherapy is that the cancer cells are larger and weaker, so they're going to get killed first. And there is a truth in that, no doubt about it. However, what's it doing to all the other cells in the body? We've only got to see someone who's been through chemotherapy, or even worse, going through it, to realise that it's an extremely desperate alternative. And it's ironic because it's a very expensive treatment, very harsh, very unkind. And this is why Rick Simpson calls his film, or series of films, Run From the Cure, because it's a funny thing. Here's a cure that most people have been brainwashed into believing is harmful, and it's a cannabis plant. I want to be really clear about this. It is not 100% certain that everyone who uses this plant will be cured from cancer. I'll explain why as we go on. But the vast majority of people, if they were to be able to take this step, take the leap, if they were able to obtain the medicine in the first place, that's a big thing, of course. So what does this cannabis plant do? Well, I'll explain. It triages. When that plant medicine goes into the human body, it asks the question, the spirit of the plant. I'm very much in shamanic mode, having been in scientific mode for a lot of this. So it asks the question, okay, what needs to be fixed most? What's the most urgent thing to be addressed? And what the plant usually discovers, and it makes sense, think about this, if you've been given a diagnosis of a fatal disease, how are you likely to feel? At the very least, you're going to be seriously, deeply shocked, aren't you? But probably a whole bunch of other feelings too. And one of the overriding pervasive states a person is going to experience is one of very, very deep stress. The stress of feeling that they're out of control and that their life is due to be terminated sooner rather than later. Very disturbing. So what this plant does is it causes a person on a body level, on a cellular level, to relax. And this relaxation on a cellular level, on a body level, then enables the body to begin to heal itself. Here's the thing. Plant medicines don't cure cancer. All that plant medicines do is they put the person into a state of sufficiently deep relaxation so that the body can take over. The rational mind is now gone bye-bye, having a nice little rest, no longer stressing and filling the person with anxiety and other stress hormones. Now that's all finished now. What's actually happening is the person is relaxing. And the state of relaxation means they can finally begin to heal. And I want to give you this example, which is if a person has a very serious injury and they find themselves in intensive care, one of the treatments that is recommended in really serious cases, what the doctors do is they induce an artificial coma into that patient, which means the rational mind goes to sleep, so they can't stress or worry, and the body takes over and starts to heal. So really, when we talk about plant medicines healing, we're talking about the plant medicines providing the right state for the person to heal. That's really important. So I'm now going to come to what I would regard to be perhaps the most distressing part of the film. So what it has been my sorrow to witness, in a very personal sense, and also working with many people, is that a lot of people who have this illness will not consider, will not even entertain the idea of anything alternative. And I suppose it's a sign and a symptom of the degree to which people have been conditioned and habituated to put their trust in authorities, which are manifestingly failing them as the incidence of this illness increases and increases. So what I would say to you is this: if you do know someone, if you're close to someone who has this illness, what you need to do is to respect their choices. And if they choose to work with a plant-based alkaline diet, this improves their prognosis significantly. And if they're prepared to work with plant medicines, then that massively increases the possibility of a complete remission and cure, as the regular continued use of this plant medicine relaxes the person to the point where they can heal themselves. All the body ever wants to do is to heal itself, but if the mind is stressed, agitated and tormented by a diagnosis, well, you can imagine how hard that's going to be, can't you? All makes obvious sense when you start to think about it. So then there's another aspect of this, and I am now going to take us way out of the material realms and very much into spiritual realms. And I apologise if it makes you feel uncomfortable, but I need to take you there too. So, what I want to look at now is, I'm going to take the example of the woman I was married to for so long, Cinder. So in her situation, she had many, many cancerous growths over a period of 1/4 of a century. And some of these were treated with orthodox medicine, but the vast majority were treated with alternative medicine. And in all cases except for the last case, she prevailed, she triumphed, she became better, she improved the situation. But then she got worse again, and this story was getting better and getting worse. And what I watched, and completely understandable when you think about it, because of course it takes a lot of self-discipline to eat really well and do all the things you know you need to do to make yourself get better. And so the first issue that she had is she would switch from being really disciplined and doing lots of good things to help herself to being into a state of just letting go and not caring so much and succumbing utterly to the sugar habit. So that was something that I noticed. There's other things as well. When we have a person with this particular illness, the question is, what is it that they're willing to consider and what is it that they're resisting? And the completely understandable thing that some people with this illness will resist is the idea of going deep into the origins and the causes. because of course they may find something that goes way down deep into their existence, perhaps into other lives, if not then into their early life, possibly traumatic things. So this can be very distressing, and some people don't have the stomach for that journey. So this then brings me to the next point. Every human being has got a physical self. That's a part of me that's speaking to you and holding the iPad and walking along the path. And then the higher self. Here's a very simplistic way to look at it. We are all approximately 25% physical self, 75% higher self. The higher self has no form, has no shape. It's a part of us that is connecting us to the source, and the higher self ultimately is running the show. So here's a bit of a disturbing thing for the ego to get hold of there. That's right, yeah, the higher self is ultimately running the show, because it's the higher self and the physical self that are in connection in this life, and most of the time we don't listen to our higher selves. Most of the time we're oblivious to whatever the higher self might have to say. But if we do meditation and other spiritual practices, we can get in touch with the higher self, and shamanic practice is a great way to do this. So when you get in touch with the higher self, you can get useful information about your situation. Now, in terms of the illness we're talking about here, if a person's higher self has got a contract which is they're going to live for so many years and experience a physical life, and after that number of years, then they're finished. There is nothing that you or I or anyone can do to change that if that's how it is. So this is why when it comes to this illness, it's a really big question to ask. What is it that you really want? What is going on for you? It's a big question, isn't it? When it comes to health and life and death. So it's the situation, what do you really want? It's not an easy question to ask someone who's got that illness. It may even be painful for them to look at, but it's important to look at that question and find out what it is they really want. And to respect and honour that, whatever your opinion might be. So this is the way I say it. Some people's higher self, they have a contract which is that they are going to live here, they're going to have a life-threatening experience, and they're going to overcome it. And other people, they're going to have a life-threatening experience, and they're going to let go of the physical body and move on. And that is a choice made at what we call the soul level. And this is why, whatever treatment we're talking about, there is no certainty. There is no guarantee that person is going to be cured. It so depends on their situation, on what they're here for, on why they're here on the planet. So in the case of my wife, the situation with her is that she declared on a number of occasions that she wanted to continue to live until our two children had grown up. And actually that didn't happen. The younger of our two children was not grown up when she passed, because that was a higher self contract. That's something that she had actually arranged before she was born. She was going to be here for a certain length of time. So this is the part that none of us can legislate about. This is the part that we can't control. What a person's actual choices are for their life. And here's something that is going to be incredibly controversial, but it needs to be said. The important question is not whether the person survives in the physical realms or not. That's not what matters most. What matters most is the quality of the day of that person. They get up, they live, they have their day. It's the quality of that day that matters more than anything else. So when it comes to an illness like this, we do everything we can to help the person to make choices which are going to result in them having a better, healthier life for as long as that may be. And that's the important thing to realise. And what I want to do is now to come up with some conclusions about what's helpful. Something I haven't mentioned so far is having fun, having a good time. That's incredibly important to someone with this illness. Anything that they're capable of doing that gives them enjoyment. That's really important. And then that brings me to the next subject, which is having a laugh. If you can have a laugh, if you can have fun, whether it's watching comedies or whatever it might happen to be, that's really helpful. And that's something that gave me great pleasure, being with my wife in those years when she had the illness, when we tapped into things that she really loved doing. And in the very latest days, I remember going and having this Chinese meal with her, and her eating prawns and all the kinds of food that she loved. And that was so nice to be able to do that with her, because that's what gave her pleasure and enjoyment. So here's the thing, we need to have this sense of what would be really good, useful things for the person to actually get better by having, and then actually to kind of let go and let it be their choice, whatever it is they're going to have. And I can't possibly make a film about cancer without speaking about water. And it's as if I've got a cue going on here, because the sound of the water is increasing as I'm moving towards the river. So, something that is helpful for all health conditions is to go and harvest spring water. If you can go and get it out from the spring or the well or wherever it is, that's such a great thing to do. And good quality living water has incredible healing properties of its own right. So that's definitely something I'd recommend as a number one step, if it's at all possible. If that's not available, then the best quality bottled water that you can get, the tap water containing the aluminium sulfate, aluminium being a cumulative poison, you really want to be avoiding that. Another little detail, and just to show you what life is, such a minefield. It's like this old-fashioned game, the board game of snakes and ladders. There are so many things that can trip a person up. So, toothpaste. You make to make sure that your toothpaste does not contain any sugar or sucralose or any other fancy words used to actually disguise and hide the fact that it's got sugar in. And it also doesn't want to have any sodium fluoride or sodium saccharin or acetylsulfame K or aspartame. All these things need to be avoided. And of course all the artificial sweeteners likewise. So it's a real dance, isn't it, this illness? And you can tell in the way I'm speaking about it, it's not easy. Because on the one hand it's incredibly easy. Plant-based alkaline diet, cannabis plant medicine, water, bish bosh, job done in a sense. But in another sense you can see there's more to it than that. So it depends on the person, their stage of evolution, what they've chosen for themselves on a spiritual level. Now my sister left this world in 2012, and in the months before she passed on, one of the things she shared with me and with anyone who would listen was this. This is my sister speaking. What I'm finding about life is life seems to be more and more about letting go. And so it is. It's about letting go. And one could argue that perhaps the ultimate letting go is letting go of the physical body. And here's the other thing I want to mention, which is that what is such a problem for people today is what I would call the opioid drugs. Morphine, heroin, all these drugs which are opiates. This is a very, very undesirable thing to be consuming, and it's so ironic because actually the cannabis is so much more of an effective pain reliever than those other substances are, without the habit-forming addictive properties too. And here's the thing, one of the works that shamans get asked to do is they get asked to do work for someone who's passed into spirits, someone who's died in other words, because someone gets a feeling that they didn't die in a good way, they might need some help. And what I found, and I found this when I did the work to see the state of my wife after she'd passed, this is what I found. I did this journey, it's called a Psychopomp journey in shamanic practice, and I found her, basically I started the journey with a drum. I suddenly found myself in a hospice, the very hospice where she died, and as soon as I arrived in the room where she was, the first words out of her mouth, bearing in mind I'm journeying, so it's all in the journeying realms, is why has nobody been to see me? She didn't even understand that she passed, and that is because she passed under the influence of morphine. So a big part of shamanic work is when someone who's passed on the influence of morphine, we need to go and do shamanic work to blow those clouds of morphine away so they can then become aware of the light and move towards the light and be received with love by all of the helping hands from deceased relatives that are waiting to welcome into the next part of the incredibly exciting journey what it is to be a human being. Because here's the thing, this is a wonderful life that we have, no matter how hellish or heavenly it is, and when we leave this behind we become multidimensional beings, so long as we can get those clouds of morphine blown away from us by a shaman or energy healer, and then all the wonderful realms are available to people without physical body. So life is amazing, life is a mystery, there's no question about that. And what I feel is going on in terms of the human race's evolution is this serious illness arrives in people's lives to shake them up. So I want to leave you with this link. I want to invite you to go and watch my film. It's called The Momentum Tunnel. This film goes into great detail and explains exactly what's going on when you get a life-threatening illness, because that illness comes along to say whatever you're doing, it's time to make some really major drastic changes to your life. And if you do that, then all sorts of wonderful things are possible for you. So a major illness like this causes you, the sufferer, to reevaluate your life and all the people around you too. And this is where it starts to become very deep, because one of the things that I witnessed was my wife in a nursing home many years before she passed, after having had a major operation, and it was a very busy part of the world. No one ever had any time for anyone in that part of the world, very, very busy. And what I watched over and over again is people leaving their busy schedules, making the time to stop what they were doing and go and visit her. Go and visit this amazingly courageous woman lying in this bed, just recovering from a major cancer operation. So here's the other aspect to it. When someone has an illness like this, it doesn't just touch them, it touches all the people around them. And that can cause an awakening in those people, an awakening to the need to be caring and loving to others, and also awakening to them to look at their own diet, their own activities, their own way of life. What can they do to improve their lives? You see what a vast subject it is. So one person's illness can actually have a knock-on effect to the lives of dozens, hundreds, or maybe even more people. Especially when you get a situation where someone suffers from something and then someone gets so moved they end up creating a national charity to promote awareness about that particular subject. That's why I say it's a very deep subject. So I'm going to bring this film to a close now and just remind you the basics. The best quality water, preferably collected spring water, number one. Number two, if possible, do body work and breath work. See my films about these practices. Number three, plant-based alkaline diet, all fresh foods, fruits and vegetables, organic. That's going to make a huge difference. Cut out the sugar, cut out the refined carbohydrates. And in the future film I'm going to go into some more practical details about exactly what would you be eating. So we're going to cover that in more details. But that's the basic step. And then there's going to get work with an energy healer or a shaman, so you can actually unlock and transform the original source situations which cause the illness in the first place. And then working with the plant medicines. And the number one choice is definitely the green medicine, and the CBD oil is now becoming legally available. So that's a possibility for people. And there are other plant medicines too, and I would also want to mention the Wachuma, the white medicine. That's also very powerful healing medicine in this regard too. But ultimately, fundamentally realizing that this illness is an opportunity to make a complete change in your way of life, to become courageous and to enjoy the small moments of life, the sound of the water running in the stream, the sounds of the aeroplane overhead, perhaps the wind ruffling your hair, whatever it is. Appreciate being alive for as long as you are alive. Thank you very much.